It's about to go down as we get major reports that the Vancouver Canucks and Brock Boeser are far away in contract talks, and we might see a trade sooner rather than later. We're going to break all this down and more later on this video. Before we get into that, I just want to give a huge shout out to everyone watching. If you're part of the 72% that's not subscribed yet and you're enjoying this daily Canucks content, make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button. We'll keep you up to date with everything to do around the team. But that, Griffin, we get off straight into this today, where we got a major report coming from Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects. And he said, I'm told that both Brock Boeser and the Canucks understand what each other want. And it's not the same thing at this point. Teams continue to call on him while the club considers the value of using him as their own rental for a playoff run if common ground can't be found. Now, I mean, initially looking at this is an insane report coming out. We've got a lot about Brock Boeser, the possibility of him getting moved, the fact that he's a UFA at the end of this year. The biggest thing with this is the Canucks don't want to lose players for nothing. We've talked about it quite a bit. Patrik Allvin's talked about it. Jim has talked about it. They don't want a Sidorov and a Lindholm situation where they lose a rental, and Brock is not so much a rental as you already own him, but you could still get value for a guy on the market. I mean, looking at the Griffin, what's your thoughts on just Cam Robinson coming out and saying that they're still pretty far apart and they're looking at other options with teams calling?
I'm hoping and praying this is a repeat of the Kevin Lankinen situation where one day it comes out, oh, they're far from it. The next day they get a deal done and then it's all sunshine and rainbows. Don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case with this situation. It's not looking like a grim outlook really as far as the future with Brock Boeser. And that's very unfortunate because as many people who know who watch this show, Brock Boeser is probably my favorite Canuck and probably the most valuable Canuck that we have just because of, yes, the points that he's scoring and the goals that he's scoring, they're not going to be as much as the top guys. But when they happen, what they mean to this team, they spark comebacks, they carry them to victory. They're game-winning goals. He's the most clutch player that we have. So losing him, especially for nothing, would be a massive blow to the Canucks. And just losing him in general would be a massive blow. And yes, he's getting a bit older. He has had health concerns. He has been injured quite a bit. However, he still has that mentality. He still has that fire where he's ready to compete. He's ready to win. And if Vancouver can come back from this Four Nations break and just clicking on all cylinders as if nothing ever happened for the first half of the season, I think this noise goes away and then it's a lot easier to get that contract done. However, if things stay the way that they're going for Vancouver, it's not going to be looking very good as far as re-signing Boeser, and that sucks to say just because of what he means to this team. However, if we can get something for him, I know we don't want to lose him for nothing, but if we can get some pieces for him, at least that's some form of compensation.
And I mean, the biggest thing is, like Cam said here, teams are calling, but they're continuing to look at common ground and see if they want to keep him as rental. The biggest thing with Brock is, like you said, he scored clutch goals. He's a guy that's going to score you 20 plus goals. In 48 games this year, 18 goals, 17 assists for 35 points. We've seen Brock get injured a tiny bit to start the year, but the biggest thing is we continue on with Thomas Drance going in and saying this is matching what I'm hearing as well. Performance over the next 7 games is going to matter a lot in terms of shaping up their own rental decisions with the remaining pending UFAs, including Brock, Suter, and Forbert. So it seems like Jim and Allvin are very open to moving all UFAs on this roster. And we know Trader Jim is not afraid to make a trade. We've seen him make trades. We've seen Jim and Allvin move on from JT Miller this year. They inspired to win a Stanley Cup. If Brock's a part of that, if he's a part of the future and they do extend him, I hope they do, then that's awesome. But I don't think they're going to go out and lose players for absolutely nothing on the open market when free agency opens. So it's going to get quite interesting. But I mean, looking at Brock, like you said, he has been clutch, scoring 18 goals so far this season. His career high of 40 goals last year, going at a point per game in the playoffs before going down with an injury. Brock is only 27 years old, and it's quite strange to see that we've seen Allvin go out and say, hey, we want to continue getting guys in their mid-20s. Brock almost fits that perfectly. I mean, looking at this, Griffin, listen, if they look at it and say, hey, we really truly cannot bring Brock back, he's 100% of rental. Would you rather move on from him, or are you convinced that maybe the Canucks team could win a cup if they did keep Brock around?
I think I'm definitely on the latter one of that. I'm obviously going to stay on the side of the fence of don't get rid of Brock, keep him around as long as you can, because I still think he gives them the best chance to win. We've talked about it all the time of how much it would suck. Just even with JT Miller, how much it would suck to see JT Miller leave the Canucks and go and win a cup with another team before he even went back to the Rangers. So with Brock Boeser, it's a very big situation where that could very much happen to the Canucks and their fan base, where we let him go because we couldn't pay him or didn't want to pay him what he was probably worth. People will say what he's worth down in the comments and how 8 million is too much and yada, yada, yada. But the fact of the matter is they will feel so terrible if we let him walk, especially for nothing, and he goes to a contending team and ends up winning a cup. That'll be a massive blow to fans, to this organization, and to this management who, if they lose the faith in Brock and they choose to let him walk or just aren't able to re-sign him, the fans are going to come after this management team vehemently because they let him go, despite how much they want him to potentially go to free up that cap space or get other players or younger players. But at the end of the day, I think Brock Boeser has so much upside, so much potential, and so much talent that you can't afford to lose him at this scenario.
And I mean, looking at the Canucks going into next year, I kind of just went on Puckpedia. Shout out to Puckpedia. Go out, check out the website because it's one of my favorite websites. Looking at Puckpedia, this lineup right here you can run next year. Obviously, you need to fill in some top six. Jonathan Lekermacki might not be 100% ready to make that jump into the top six. He's lighting it up for the Abstract Canucks, setting records since Daniel Sprong in the AHL, which is hilarious to even think about. But looking at the lineup, this lineup does look really good. And the biggest thing is you do have cap space, 11.5 million with 3 roster spots to fill. You can bring up Mancini as an extra defenseman. There's still guys in the AHL. But looking at this, my biggest issue and what scares me the most, Griffin, is with this roster, yes, this roster still looks very good. It looks like this year's roster minus Brock, adding Jonathan Lekermacki, adding Tom Willander onto a extra defenseman or maybe even into the defensive core, depending on Susie. But my biggest issue with bringing Brock back on a long-term deal, yes, he's dealt with some injuries. I think he's an incredible player. I'm pretty sure everyone in the comments will agree. But if you're going out and spending, say, $8.5 million of this around $12 million in cap space, are you a little worried that maybe they get into the problem of not having enough depth again? If someone goes down, they're kind of stuck in a situation with not being able to fill it with key players. Would you go out and sign Brock to maybe $9 million? Or would you rather kind of build this team in a new way, get some cheaper assets, maybe a couple guys on bridge deals to kind of fill out the roster?
When you put it like that, it's hard to disagree with you. It's a matter of my heart versus my brain in this scenario. My heart would obviously say, yeah, lock Boeser down, even though it might compromise us long term. Like you said, if you can go out and get other pieces for him to fill in this roster, because that is a lot of cap space that they would be giving up to sign him. So at the end of the day, logically, no, I don't think it makes sense to sign Boeser, even though I'll say it till the day I die, sign Boeser as much as you can. And that's knowing how much it would put us back as far as financially. So yes, I'm saying that as a selfish fan, not as a logical fan. So I will say that. However, with Brock Boeser and what he can bring to this, it's almost, I'm not going to say it's almost worth it just so another team can't have him, but it's almost like one of those things where if I can't have him, nobody can have him. So if it does deplete the Canucks, at least other teams are getting depleted of his talents as a result. But then it leads to all this turmoil, toxicity, players not being happy and all that. So it is a very bad road to go down at the end of the day. So yeah, when you put it like that, it does make sense to eventually move on from him if they can't get a cap-friendly deal done. But at the end of the day, too, we know that Patrik Allvin and Jim Rutherford know how to move pieces around and make money work to make sure that their top players stay there.
And I mean, the biggest thing is looking at the roster, you can still move out contracts. Hoaglander had his extension. You can move on from this contract. Susie is a guy that has been on trade talks. Moving these guys out would open up room to bring back Brock. But what's your guys' thoughts on this? Looking at this Canucks roster, would you feel more comfortable maybe going out, getting multiple players to fill out this lineup more than just having Brock Boeser? Or do you rather go get Brock, move a few contracts they already have? There's a lot to unpack from just Cam Robinson and everyone talking about it. Let us know down below. While you're down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back with another episode, so keep your eye out for that. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Griffin, and take care.